This is SolydX 2018-01, based on Debian Stable with the Xfce desktop. It has a sister distribution called SolidK, which uses the KDE Plasma desktop. This was started by a group of people who were working on Xfce and KDE versions of Linux Mint Debian Edition, but when Linux Mint dropped the Xfce and KDE versions of Linux Mint Debian Edition, they started the SolidXK distribution. I used it for quite some time when it first came out. It had two versions, a rolling release based on Debian testing, which was aimed for the home market, and a presumably more stable version based on Debian Stable aimed at the business market. Well, the version based on Debian testing rolled less and less frequently as time went by, and finally they abandoned that version, and all that's available now is the version based on Debian Stable. I've left this configured pretty much the way it came. This is the whisker menu. The only thing I've done here is that I've turned it around so that the categories are on the left rather than the right. I'm not going to go through everything here, but if you look under Office, you can see that I have two versions of Libre Office. It came with a rather old version from Debian Stable. And that was version 5.2.7.2. Fortunately, snaps work with SolidX, and I was able to get the snap version of LibreOffice, which is version 5.4.4.2, the latest one that I'm aware of. The version of Firefox was straight from Debian Stable, and that's Firefox ESR. That's really rather old. Firefox Quantum, which is either version 57 or 58, depending on whether you've updated recently. Quite an improvement over the old Firefox. But this is just version 52.5.2, really ancient. It is possible to install Firefox Quantum on Debian. I just haven't done it here. You can either download the binary files from the Firefox Quantum web page, or you can enable the Debian SID or unstable repository and just designate it to take second place to the stable repository, except for certain exceptions. And one of the exceptions you'll make will be Firefox Quantum. However, that's a bit of a hassle, and I just haven't done it yet. It is possible. When it came to Kdenlive, the version in the Debian Stable repositories was version 16.12. The latest version is 17.12. When I tried to install the snap version of Kdenlive, it was unavailable. Kdenlive's website said that it temporarily discontinued the snap version until a maintainer is found. I did, however, find the app image, and as I've said before, the way to use those is to right-click on Properties, go to Permissions, and check Allow this file to run as a program. So I did that. Now when I double-click on this, it opens Kdenlive 17.12. I don't have some items installed that are necessary to make DVDs, but I'm going to ignore that for the moment. Unlike the app image that I tried with MX17, this one seems to work. SolydX. Now there's a welcome screen. It appears when you first open SolidX, but you can get it back from the system category. This is a little introduction, and then when you go to Next, you have the option of installing various applications. This doesn't really remember what I've installed and what I haven't installed. When you open this, it shows everything as being ready to install, except the ones you unclick. And then you have to click on install for each page. If you go to the next page, it won't remember what you've chosen to install on the previous page. But just to show you what's available, there's Adobe Flash with a big warning that it's not open source, and some Flash content may harm your system, meaning that it's notoriously vulnerable. And here with the content scramble system for playing proprietary DVDs, you're urged to check your local laws to make sure you can use them legally, and I'm sure you have a full law library at hand for you to do that. Then there's some business applications, GNU Cache, Dolly Bar, Web Software to manage your business context, Project Libre, which is a project management application. There's GIMP, there's Inkscape, Shotwell, Clementine, Handbrake, Sound Converter, PTV, and Kdenlive. If you install this, it will install PTV if you are using SolidX, and it will install Kdenlive if you are using SolidK. I'm using SolidX, but I wanted Kdenlive, so I installed this separately. Then same is true of transmission versus KTorrent. Depends on which one you're using. Gparted is available, VirtualBox is available, FileZilla, Steam, and a whole series of games, Mindtest, Zero AD, The Battle for West North, Sauerbraten, Neverball, Super Tux Kart, and Play on Linux is available for playing Windows-based games. I don't really play games. I don't use Wine, which is used for playing Windows applications, so I didn't install this. But that gives you an idea of what's available from the welcome screen. Now, there's a package manager, and there is also Synaptic Package Manager. So you can take your choice. The package manager is fairly basic. You can search for something. I'm going to search for Pi Renamer. Press enter. And it has it, the Maths File Renamer. So I'm going to click on that. Now you notice one thing. When you click on something to install it, it immediately gives you the option to remove it. So you kind of wonder whether when you click on Apply Changes up here, whether you're going to be removing it or installing it. Turns out you're going to be installing it, even though it says Remove down here now. So Apply Changes. Then of course I have to enter my password. And authenticate. So now it's installed, but this screen looks just like it did before I installed it. So you have to remember where you are in the process to avoid getting confused. I should say that I had a little problem with the SolydX installer. I installed it on a remote hard drive, as I usually do when I'm trying out new distributions, and there didn't seem to be any way of telling it not to use the swap partition that I had on my internal drive. With the Ubiquiti installer, you can always choose not to use that partition, but that wasn't an option with this installer, so it ended up using every swap partition I had on both drives, and I think that limits the portability of this installation on a remote drive. However, I wasn't so concerned about portability at this point. I just don't see why, with so many installers that work so well, Ubiquiti, Anaconda, Calamares, etc., that it's necessary to reinvent the wheel and have an installer that doesn't work very well. But that's what they did. I'm not going to go through all of these things here, but settings is quite extensive. Of course, there's a settings window also. Accessories is also extensive. I'm going to expand this whisker menu so I don't have to scroll quite so much. There are a few unusual things here. This Clam TK is a virus scanner. I've used it in the past out of sheer curiosity, and I've never found a virus in the 8+ years that I've been using Linux. However, if you want to have fun, you can use this. If you have a Windows partition, it will also scan that for viruses. It doesn't repair the viruses, it just scans for them. So in education, it has Libre Office Math, which is apparently the only thing that most distributions put in the education category. But of course, you may install other things. Under graphics, it has GIMP, but I installed that with the welcome screen. And of course it has two versions of LibreOffice Draw. I also installed Shotwell with the welcome screen. Under Internet it has FileZilla, Firefox ESR, as I said, Thunderbird transmission, and the X11 VNC server. Under multimedia, I installed Handbrake from the welcome screen, and I installed MuseScore 2.1 in the Snap version. It came with Pulse Audio Volume Control. I installed Simple Screen Recorder from the package manager, and I installed the sound converter from the welcome screen. It came with the VLC media player and with XF Burn. And as I pointed out before, I now have two versions of LibreOffice. If I were going to use this for any length of time, of course I would get rid of the old version simply by uninstalling it with the Synaptic Package Manager. And I'd keep the Snap version, although I haven't used it extensively enough to know if everything works. With some of the earlier implementations of the Snap version of LibreOffice, they warned that some functions might not work, and I haven't really tried it to find out. And under System, it has quite a few things I really like GW Package Installer. I think I installed gparted, but I can't remember. Some of these are repetitions, like Lucky Backup. I don't use it. There is a root terminal available, which is nice. There's the SolidX system settings. This is for device drivers. I'm not going to go into that now. Repositories. I'm using the United States main repositories. There are several others. And there's an invitation here to enable the backports repository if you need a newer software version, at the risk of destabilizing your system. And I guess you do that by checking this box here. I'm not going to do that. I can change the locale, and I can mount additional partitions on boot. I don't want to do that either. I'm not interested in encrypting anything. This is worthwhile if you want to hold back a certain package to prevent it from being updated. I've sometimes had to do that with other applications. With some applications, the newest version is not always the best. And if you encounter one like that, this is a good way to hold it back. Cleanup removes unneeded package, and this changes the splash screen. I'm not interested in doing that now, but of course you can do it. When it comes to the main screen, right-clicking on desktop properties gives you some options here. They all have the SolydX logo. I'll keep the one I have, although these are all nice. You notice none of the desktop icons are enabled by default. Home, file system, trash, removable devices. And I'll leave them disabled. Of course, every version of Xfce is highly configurable. Under Appearances here, this is using the BreezeX style. There are others, Graybird, SolydX. I'll go back to BreezeX. And under icons, it's using Evolver Flat Vivid Sunken, one I've never heard of, but it works fairly well. Let's take a look at some icons. So if I want to change those icons to Evolver Flat Vivid Sunken and Dark, can't really tell much difference. I want to go to the Tango icon scheme. That's quite a bit of difference. Appearance appears as two dress shirts here. So I'm going to go to Evolver Flat Vivid Sunken. And of course I can customize the panels, add, subtract panels, etc. Again, under Window Manager you have certain themes. This is BreezeX, default, Breeze DarkX, BreezeX, Deloa, default, high DPI, everything gets bigger. Default X high DPI, it's even bigger. Graybird SolydX, Cocody, Mohili. I think I'll leave it on BreezeX. Now, as with the other Debian versions I've looked at, this supports all of my printers, all of my scanners, so it's one of the distributions that I could actually use. And as I've said in the past, I've used it successfully, so I know that it works. This is XRAM Tech. Thanks for watching.